What would you do if a creature designed to kill you stood inches from your face, roaring with all the primal fury its small body could muster? Marcus Chen had exactly 3 seconds to decide, and his choice would change everything. The sound hit him first, a high-pitched warble that tried desperately to be threatening but came out more like an angry kettle. And Marcus found himself staring into the bioluminescent eyes of something that looked like a cross between a panther and a dragon. No bigger than a house cat, but with needle-sharp teeth that glinted in the purple twilight of Kethara Prime. His scanner had died 20 minutes ago. His emergency beacon wasn't reaching the ship. And now this furry little nightmare blocked his path through the crystal forest, puffing up its iridescent fur and doing its absolute best to be terrifying. Marcus thought about his training, about the 17 protocols for hostile wildlife encounters, about the plasma pistol on his hip. Then he did something that would have gotten him expelled from the exploration corps. He sat down, just dropped right there onto the mossy ground, crossed his legs, and made himself smaller. The cub's roar faltered mid-screech, confusion rippling across its features as its prey did the opposite of what prey should do. "Hey there, little one," Marcus said softly, keeping his hands visible and relaxed. "You're trying really hard, aren't you? But I'm guessing you've never actually caught anything before." The creature tilted its head, bioluminescent spots along its spine flickering from angry red to uncertain yellow. "Yeah, that's what I thought. You're all bark and no bite, aren't?" The words died in his throat as he felt the cold press of something sharp against his neck, and a voice like silk over steel whispered in his ear, "Do not move, human, or you will discover that what my charge lacks in experience, I more than compensate for." Marcus froze, not because of the blade, but because the woman who materialized from absolutely nowhere was the most striking person he'd ever seen. With silver hair that seemed to capture and hold the planet's fading light, eyes the color of an earth storm, and pointed ears that swept back elegantly from a face that would have made Renaissance artists weep. She wore tactical gear that looked both functional and impossibly refined, all dark grays and midnight blues with subtle armor plating, and the weapon at his throat hummed with energy that made his skin tingle. "I wasn't going to hurt it," Marcus managed, keeping very still as the cub scampered behind its protector's legs, suddenly brave, now that backup had arrived. The woman's eyes narrowed, scanning him with an intensity that felt like being read on a molecular level. "Your kind say many things. Your actions rarely match your words. We found the weapons in the valley, the burn marks where your people tested their tools of destruction." Marcus's mind raced. Weapons? His team was a botanical survey crew. They hadn't even brought anything heavier than sample collection drones. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm a xenobotanist, I study plants. And we haven't." She pressed the blade closer, and he saw something flicker in her expression, not anger exactly, but something deeper and more painful. "Then explain why Kessex roared at you." "These young ones sense intent. They know predators from prey, threats from harmless creatures. He deemed you dangerous." The cub, apparently named Kessex, chose that moment to get bored with the standoff and began batting at a floating spore pod, doing an awkward pounce that ended with him tumbling tail over snout. Marcus couldn't help it. He smiled. "Dangerous, huh? Kid's got terrible judgment." The woman's blade wavered slightly. "You mock him?" "No," Marcus said, and he realized his heart was racing, not just from fear, but from something else, an opportunity, a connection he didn't fully understand yet. "I'm impressed by him." He was scared, probably never seen a human before, but he stood his ground anyway. That took courage. Stupid courage. But still, the alien woman studied him for a long moment, and he could see thoughts moving behind those storm gray eyes, like clouds racing across a sky. Finally, slowly, she withdrew the blade. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human. When Kessex challenged you, why did you not run? Why did you not fight?" Marcus carefully turned to face her, moving slowly so as not to spook either guardian or cub. "Because he's a kid. Where I come from, when kids act tough, it usually means they're scared or trying to prove something. Running would have made him chase. Fighting would have hurt him. Sitting down, making myself non-threatening, that gave him options." A strange expression crossed her face, something between surprise and sorrow. "You speak of combat philosophy?" "I speak of children," Marcus corrected gently. "I have a nephew back on Earth, about 6 years old, does the exact same thing when he's overwhelmed. Gets loud, puffs up, tries to seem bigger than he is. Best thing to do is give him space and show him you're not a threat." Kessex, oblivious to being discussed, had discovered Marcus's drop supply pack and was currently attempting to eat a sample container. The woman moved with liquid grace to retrieve her charge, and Marcus noticed how she touched the cub, gentle despite her earlier ferocity, cradling him with obvious affection. "My name is Lyria," she said finally, and there was a weight to the introduction, as if names meant something more on this world. "I am guardian of the Kesvar, the Twilight Hunters, last of their kind on Kethara Prime." She paused, something vulnerable flickering across her features. "Or what remains of them after your people came." The accusation stung, but Marcus heard the pain beneath it. "Lyria, I swear to you, my team hasn't harmed anything. We're scientists. We're here to study the crystal forests and document the ecosystem. If someone's been hunting or destroying habitat, it's not us." She wanted to believe him. He could see it in the way. Her posture softened slightly, but doubt held her back. "Then who?" "We have tracked the disturbances for 7 cycles now. The burned earth, the sonic disruptions that drive prey animals from their territories, the traps set with off-world technology." A cold feeling settled in Marcus's stomach. The expedition had 3 survey teams, his botanical unit, a geological crew to the south, and a corporate-sponsored mineral assessment team that had arrived 2 weeks before the academic groups. "The mining surveyors," he said, pieces clicking together with ugly clarity. "They have a private security detail, way more hardware than a simple survey should need. I thought it was just corporate paranoia. But if they're testing weapons or clearing areas for extraction sites," Lyria's expression hardened. "You know who threatens my world. Knowing and being able to stop it are different things," Marcus admitted. "I'm a botanist with a broken scanner and no way to contact my ship. I don't exactly have leverage against a corporate military unit." Kessex squirmed in Lyria's arms, making little chirping sounds, and she absently stroked the ridge along his spine, calming him with practiced ease. Marcus watched the interaction and felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of shared values across species and stars. Here was someone who cared, who protected, who stood between the vulnerable and those who would do harm. That was a language he understood fluently. "But I can help in other ways," he continued, an idea forming. "I can document what they're doing, gather evidence, and get it to people who can shut them down. The exploration course takes environmental violations seriously, especially on protected worlds, and Kethara Prime has restricted development status. If I can prove they're exceeding their survey permissions." Lyria looked at him sharply. "Why would you do this? You gain nothing but the anger of your own people." Marcus met her eyes and found himself speaking a truth he hadn't fully acknowledged until this moment. "Because it's right. Because these little guys deserve to grow up. And because," he hesitated, then pushed forward, "because I think you've been fighting alone for too long. And nobody should have to do that." The words hung in the air between them. And for just a moment, Lyria's carefully controlled expression cracked, revealing exhaustion and hope and fear, all tangled together. "You would risk your standing among your kind for creatures you just met? For a world not your own?" "For the principle," Marcus said. "And yeah, maybe a little bit, for the guardian who cares enough to hold a blade to a stranger's throat." Was that almost a smile? The corner of her mouth twitched. "You are strange, Marcus Chen. I've been called worse." Kessex chose that moment to make another break for freedom, launching himself from Lyria's arms with more enthusiasm than coordination and landing directly on Marcus's lap. The cub froze, apparently as surprised as Marcus was, then began a thorough investigation of this new perch, sniffing at pockets and pawing at zipper pulls with intense concentration. "He likes you," Lyria observed, and now there was definitely warmth in her voice. "That is unexpected. I'm just more interesting than I look," Marcus said, gently redirecting Kessex's exploration away from his equipment pouches. The cub's fur was softer than it appeared, warm, and carrying a faint scent like cinnamon and ozone. "How many are there? Other Kesvar like him?" The light in Lyria's eyes dimmed. 14 cubs, 3 breeding pairs, and myself as guardian. Once, my ancestors protected hundreds, but disease, habitat loss, and hunters took their toll long before your people arrived. We had reached an equilibrium, a chance to slowly rebuild. Then the disruptions began, and now, she gestured to Kessex, who was attempting to eat Marcus's sleeve. "The cubs cannot learn to hunt because the prey patterns are chaotic. The breeding pairs cannot nest because the ground trembles with your machinery. We are dying again, just more slowly." Marcus felt anger rising, not at Lyria, but at his own species, at the corporate mentality that saw worlds as resources rather than homes. How long do I have before the mining team does something irreversible? 3 days, Lyria said quietly. We tracked their survey patterns. In 3 days, they will reach the singing caves where the breeding pairs have their dens. If they use their sonic equipment there, she didn't finish, but she didn't need to. Marcus's mind was already racing through options, calculating distances and communications delays. Okay, I can work with 3 days, but I'm going to need your help, and you're going to have to trust me at least a little. Lyria studied him for a long moment, and he could see the calculation happening, the weighing of risk versus potential reward. Finally, she nodded. Show me what you plan, human. Then I will decide if trust is warranted. They worked through the night, or what passed for night on a planet where 3 moons kept the landscape in perpetual twilight. Lyria led Marcus to her sanctuary, a hidden grove where the crystal trees grew so thick their branches wove together overhead, creating a prismatic canopy that scattered moonlight into rainbow shadows. The other Xenobotanist cubs tumbled and played under the watchful eyes of the adult pairs, and Marcus felt his breath catch at the beauty of it, the terrible, fragile beauty of something rare and precious. Lyria showed him how the Xenobotanist communicated, not just with sound, but with bioluminescent patterns that rippled across their fur like living light shows. Each family group has unique signatures, she explained, running her hand along one adult's flank and triggering a cascade of blues and greens. They are not simple animals, Marcus Chen. They have culture, memory, songs they pass from generation to generation through light and vibration. Marcus carefully documented everything on his backup recorder, the one built into his wrist unit that the mining company didn't know about. Every pattern, every behavior, building an irrefutable case that this was not just wildlife, but a sentient species, protected under a dozen interstellar treaties. This is incredible, he whispered, watching 2 cubs engage in what looked like a complicated game involving synchronized light patterns. Lyria, this isn't just important for stopping the mining operation. This could change Kethara Prime's classification entirely. If the Xenobotanist are sentient, this world becomes untouchable for development. Lyria moved closer to him, close enough that he could see the faint luminescence of her own skin, a subtle glow that suggested she and the Xenobotanist had deeper connections than just guardian and protected. My people, the Keth, we evolved alongside them. They taught us to communicate beyond words, to see the world through light and vibration. When I was a child, no bigger than these cubs, a Xenobotanist named Silverpaw saved me from a rockfall, shielded me with her own body. She died from her injuries, but not before she passed her song to me. Her memories and wisdom. She touched her chest, and Marcus saw what he'd mistaken for decorative elements in her clothing were actually bioluminescent nodes that pulsed in rhythm with the nearby Xenobotanist. We are bonded, my kind and theirs. If they disappear, we lose part of ourselves, the part that makes us who we are. Marcus found himself reaching out, almost unconsciously, and gently taking her hand. The touch sent a tingle through his skin, her bioluminescence responding to his warmth. They won't disappear. We won't let them. Lyria looked down at their joined hands, and something shifted in her expression, walls coming down that he suspected had been up for a very long time. You speak with such certainty. How can you be sure? Because I've met their guardian, Marcus said simply. And she's pretty damn fierce, this time. Lyria definitely smiled, and it transformed her whole face, turning fierce protectiveness into something radiant. Fierce. Yes. My mother used to say I was fierce like the storm. Winds, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Your mother was smart, Marcus said, and meant it. They spend hours transferring data, Marcus, explaining what they needed for an airtight legal case, while Lyria shared knowledge about the Xenobotanist that no human had ever recorded. Somewhere in the process, sitting close together in the rainbow shadows, their professional collaboration became something else, something neither of them had planned, but both recognized. When Lyria leaned her head against his shoulder, exhausted from the long night, Marcus felt a surge of protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. He'd known this woman for less than a day, but something about her, her dedication and strength and the vulnerability she hid beneath it, had gotten past all his defenses. Tell me about your world, Lyria murmured, half asleep. Tell me if it has places as beautiful as this. Marcus thought about Earth, about cities and crowds and the constant noise of humanity pushing against every boundary. We have beautiful places, he said carefully. But we've also lost a lot, destroyed things we can never get back because we didn't understand their value until too late. That's why I became a botanist, I think. Trying to make sure we don't keep making the same mistakes out here among the stars. Lyria was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep, but then she whispered, "Do you think people can change? Can a species that has done so much damage learn to do better?" It was the kind of question that deserved more than an easy answer. "I think individuals can change," Marcus said slowly. "And if enough individuals change, maybe the whole species shifts. It's slow, and there are always setbacks. But, yeah, I have to believe we can do better. Otherwise, what's the point?" The next morning came too quickly, announced by a shift in the moonlight, as Kethara Prime's primary sun finally crested the horizon, turning the crystal forest into a cathedral of refracted light. Marcus and Lyria had a plan, dangerous and probably stupid, but it was the best chance they had. Marcus would approach the mining team's camp under the guise of seeking assistance with his broken equipment, while actually deploying a network of his survey drones to document their activities. Lyria would use her knowledge of the terrain to position Kethara watchers, creating a comprehensive record of the protected species habitat overlapping with the mining company's targets. Together, they'd build a case so strong even corporate lawyers couldn't dispute it. "If they discover what you're doing," Lyria said, checking the modified harness she'd made for carrying equipment through the forest, "they will not simply send you home in disgrace. These people, they have already shown they will harm what stands in their way." Marcus adjusted his gear, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in his stomach. "Then I'd better not get caught." Lyria caught his arm, turning him to face her. "Marcus Chen, I want you to know, whatever happens today, you have already done something no human has done before. You have given me hope that your kind can be more than destroyers." The words hit him harder than expected, and Marcus found himself cupping her face gently, marveling at the warmth of her skin and the way her eyes widened slightly at his touch. "Whatever happens, we're in this together now. You're not alone anymore." For a moment, he thought she might kiss him, and his heart hammered at the possibility. Instead, she pressed her forehead to his, and he felt a surge of warmth and light as her bioluminescence responded to their closeness, wrapping them both in a soft glow. "In my culture," she whispered, "this is how we share strength before a trial. You carry part of my light, and I carry part of your warmth." "I like that tradition," Marcus managed, his voice rough with emotion. The mining camp sprawled across a cleared section of forest like a scar, all hard angles and industrial efficiency that clashed violently with the organic beauty of Kethara Prime. Marcus approached with his hands visible, projecting the image of a hapless scientist in over his head, while his wrist recorder captured everything and his deployed drones ghosted through the perimeter on silent rotors. The security chief, a woman named Torrens with cybernetic enhancements that looked more military than corporate, greeted him with professional suspicion. "Dr. Chen, isn't it? Botanical survey team? You're a long way from your assigned sector." Marcus launched into a rehearsed story about equipment failure and terrain navigation errors, all technically true, while his eyes cataloged details. Seismic charges stacked near the equipment bay, way more than a survey would need. Weapons racks with hunting trophies, including what looked horrifyingly like adult Kethara pelts. Containment cages clearly designed for live capture. His blood ran cold, even as he kept his expression friendly and slightly embarrassed. Torrens seemed to buy his act, or at least found him beneath her concern, and assigned a technician to look at his scanner. While they worked, Marcus's drones did their job, documenting everything, cross-referencing with Lyria's habitat maps, building an airtight case. He was almost clear, almost safe, when a technician emerged from a storage unit carrying a cage, and inside, crying with frightened chirps, was a Kethara cub. Not Kessex, but one of his siblings, captured and terrified and far from home. Marcus's carefully maintained cover nearly shattered right there. His hands clenched into fists, and it took every ounce of self-control not to do something spectacularly stupid. The technician saw his expression and laughed. "Never seen one of the local vermin up close? Little bastards are worth a fortune to exotic pet collectors. This one'll fund the whole expedition once we get it to market." Vermin, pet. Marcus forced himself to breathe, to think like a scientist and not an enraged guardian. If he blew up now, it would ruin everything, and more cubs would suffer. "Impressive specimen," he managed, though the words tasted like ash. I didn't realize the company had xenobiology objectives. Torrens appeared at his elbow, and her expression had shifted from dismissive to speculative. We have varied interests, Dr. Chen. This planet has many resources, some more unique than others. She paused, studying him with eyes that missed nothing. You seem uncomfortable. Problem with specimen collection? This was the moment, the cliff edge where one wrong word would send everything tumbling down. Marcus thought about Lyria waiting in the forest, about Kessex trying so hard to be brave, about the adult Kesvar sharing their songs of light. No problem, he lied, and hated himself for it. Just surprised. My briefing suggested minimal wildlife interaction protocols. Torrens relaxed slightly. Well, opportunities arise. I'm sure you understand. Oh, he understood perfectly. He understood that these people saw living, sentient beings as commodities. He understood that they'd destroy the singing caves and every Kesvar in them if it meant a profitable quarter. He understood that Lyria had shown him remarkable trust, and he would walk through fire before betraying it. Marcus left the camp with his repaired scanner and a rage burning in his chest hotter than any sun. His drones had captured everything: the illegal weapons, the poaching operation, the seismic charges positioned to demolish protected habitat. It was enough, more than enough, but the memory of that cub's frightened cries followed him through the forest. He found Lyria at the rendezvous point, and she knew immediately something was wrong. What happened? Marcus told her, watching her expression shift from concern to fury to something that looked like grief. When he mentioned the captured cub, she made a sound that was almost a Kesvar cry, herself, anguished and fierce. Pika, she whispered. His pattern is distinctive, gold and amber spirals. He wandered from the sanctuary yesterday. I thought he would return by nightfall, but if they have him. She looked at Marcus with eyes that held both desperation and determination. We must get him back, Lyria. If we assault the camp, we lose everything. They'll claim self-defense, bury the evidence, and you'll be labeled a terrorist. We have to be smart about this. Smart? Her voice cracked. That child is terrified, separated from his family, being treated as merchandise. Every moment he suffers is a moment I have failed in my duty as guardian. Marcus grabbed her shoulders gently but firmly. You haven't failed. But rushing and angry is how we ensure you can never protect any of them again. Trust me, please. We have enough evidence to bring the cores down on this operation within hours. When that happens, Pika will be released, the charges will be removed, and these people will face prosecution. But we have to do it right. Lyria shook with barely contained emotion, and Marcus pulled her into an embrace, feeling her luminescence pulse erratically against him. I know it's hard. God, I know. I wanted to burn that camp to the ground when I saw him. But we're going to win this the right way. And then you're going to take Pika home yourself, okay? She nodded against his chest, and they stood there for a moment, drawing strength from each other. Then Lyria pulled back, wiped her eyes with fierce determination, and became the guardian again. Then we contact your people now. No more delays. Getting a signal out proved harder than expected. The mining company had suppressors up, blocking unauthorized communications, but Lyria knew the terrain in ways that made Marcus's mapping computers look primitive. She led him to a crystal spire that rose above the interference, a needle of mineral formations that touched the clouds. The climb was treacherous, but they moved together with increasing synchronization, Marcus's technical knowledge combining with Lyria's instinctive understanding of her world. At the summit, with 3 moons rising and the sun setting, Marcus sent the data burst. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence, fired on a tight beam to the exploration course ship in orbit. Then they waited, because there was nothing else to do, sitting together on a ledge of crystal with the whole world spread below them. When this is over, Lyria said quietly, when the Kesvar are safe and your people have removed the threat, what will you do? Marcus hadn't let himself think that far ahead, but now, with Lyria warm against his side, and the alien sky painted in colors Earth had no names for, the answer seemed obvious. I'll probably be reassigned. The company will make sure I'm persona non grata in corporate exploration circles. He paused, gathering courage. But Kethara Prime still needs a xenobotanist to document the crystal forests. Legitimate research, the kind that protects rather than exploits. If I requested a long-term posting, and if the local guardian species approved, Lyria turned to look at him, and her smile was like sunrise. The local guardian species would very much approve. The kiss, when it came, was soft and tentative, and tasted like hope. Marcus felt her bioluminescence flare bright, wrapping them both in light, and thought that if this was what falling felt like, he never wanted to stop. The response from the cores came faster than expected, a priority shuttle burning through atmosphere with the kind of urgency that meant someone high up was very, very angry. Commander Reeves herself led the raid on the mining camp, and Marcus and Lyria watched from the forest as corporate security was disarmed and detained with brutal efficiency. Torrens was in restraints and shouting about lawyers within 15 minutes. Pika was found in his cage, and Lyria nearly broke cover in her eagerness to reach him, but Marcus held her back just long enough for the all-clear signal. Then she was running, and Marcus was right behind her, and when the Kesvar cub was placed in her arms, the sound she made was pure joy. Pika's bioluminescence flared in recognition, his fear pattern shifting to comfort and home, and he burrowed into Lyria's embrace while Marcus felt something tight in his chest finally relax. Commander Reeves approached them with an expression that managed to be impressed and exasperated in equal measure. Dr. Chen, you have simultaneously committed career suicide with the private sector and become a folk hero to the conservation community. The evidence you gathered is going to result in the biggest environmental prosecution in decades. She looked at Lyria, taking in the pointed ears and luminescent skin without apparent surprise. And you must be the local contact mentioned in the reports. Guardian Lyria, the Exploration Corps extends formal apologies for the actions of those who violated your world's protections. We will be conducting a full ecological assessment and upgrading Kethara Prime's status to sentient habitat. Prohibited for resource extraction, Lyria inclined her head with natural grace, still cradling Pika. Your words are welcomed, Commander. Your actions will determine if trust can be built. Fair enough, Reeves agreed. She turned back to Marcus. As for you, Dr. Chen, you're being offered a choice. Return to Earth and face the corporate lawsuits, or accept a 5-year research posting here as liaison between the cores and local inhabitants. Personally, I think you've already made up your mind. But protocol requires I ask. Marcus looked at Lyria, at the crystal forests beyond, at Pika, chirping contentedly in the Guardian's arms. Some decisions weren't really decisions at all. I'll take the posting, Commander. The months that followed became the happiest of Marcus's life. He established a research station in harmony with the environment, documenting not just plants, but the intricate relationships between all of Kethara Prime's inhabitants. Lyria became his partner in every sense, teaching him to see the world through Kesvar patterns, sharing her culture's deep knowledge of sustainable coexistence. The cubs, including young Kesix, learned to trust the strange human, who sat very still and let them climb all over him during their play. One evening, as they watched the Kesvar perform their light song, a ceremony of beauty that made Marcus's eyes sting with grateful tears, Lyria leaned against him and said, "Do you remember what I asked you? If people can change?" "I remember," Marcus said, lacing his fingers through hers. "I think I'm still figuring out the answer." "I think," Lyria said softly, "that I have found my answer." When Kesix roared at you, when you made yourself small instead of making yourself dangerous, that was when I first saw it. The possibility that strength can be gentle, that your species contains multitudes, both destroyers and protectors. She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the bioluminescent dance of the Kesvar. "You showed me that the future does not have to repeat the past." Marcus cupped her luminescent face, marveling as always at the wonder of her. "You know what the really incredible part is? I came to this planet to study alien botany, and instead I learned what it means to be human. You taught me that, and your fierce, protective heart, and your refusal to give up on what matters." "We taught each other," Lyria corrected, and kissed him as the Kesvar song swelled around them, light and sound and love all woven together. Kesix, now substantially bigger and marginally better at hunting, padded over to investigate, his pattern flickering with curious content family. He headbutted Marcus's leg with surprising force, then did the same to Lyria, before sprawling across both their laps with the absolute confidence of a creature who knew he was loved. "He's gotten heavy," Marcus noted, adjusting to accommodate the growing predator. Lyria laughed, the sound like music. "He is becoming what he was always meant to be, strong and fierce, yes, but also gentle with those in his care. I think perhaps he learned from watching a certain human who understands that true strength is knowing when not to fight." "That's oddly poetic for someone who threatened to kill me when we met," Marcus teased. I was prepared to kill you, Lyria corrected with mock seriousness. There is a difference. But then you sat down, and everything changed, Kessex purred. Between them, his bioluminescence pulsing in a pattern that Lyria had taught Marcus meant safe pack home. And Marcus thought about how one moment, one choice, could alter the course of everything. He'd decided to show compassion to a frightened cub, and in doing so, had found a partner, a purpose, and a place where he truly belonged. Above them, the crystal trees sang with wind and moonlight, the Kesvar danced their ancient patterns. And two people from different worlds held each other close, proof that sometimes the best response to fear isn't violence or flight, but simple, profound kindness. Hey, Lyria, Marcus said softly. Thank you. For what? For giving a lost human a chance. For being fierce and beautiful and brave. For teaching me that home isn't a planet, it's wherever you choose to protect what matters. Lyria's luminescence flared bright, and Kessex chirped sleepily. And in that moment, under alien stars, with the song of an ancient species filling the air, Marcus Chen was exactly where he needed to be. The story of the predator cub who roared at a human would be told many times in the years to come, in exploration corps briefings and around Keth campfires. But those who lived it knew the real truth. It wasn't about the roar at all. It was about the response, about choosing connection over conflict, about a guardian who dared to hope and a scientist who dared to care, and about how sometimes the smallest gesture of kindness can echo across worlds and change everything. Kessex yawned, displaying all those needle-sharp teeth that had once tried so hard to be threatening, then snuggled deeper into the warmth of his family, both the guardian who had always protected him and the human who had learned to do the same. And in the crystal forest of Kethara Prime, surrounded by light and love and the promise of tomorrow, that was more than enough.